Hello, my name is Denny Royal, and I'm the Vice President of Design for MentorMate, and I've been with the company for about 2.5 years now. So people ask me about biomimicry a lot. It's a bit esoteric. There's about maybe 80 or 100 people in the world that are trained at the level that I am right now, which is kind of interesting, but it also means we don't have a lot of people to collaborate with. But I approached that and went into that because I think human-centered design does a really good job of defining unmet need, understanding people that have those unmet needs. And what I kept seeing in the design space in particularly is when we would go in front of a whiteboard then to solve whatever problem was or whatever that unmet need was for someone, that it's the 4 or 5 of us or 8 of us or however many folks are in that brainstorming session to solve that problem. And all we have is the lived experiences of those people. And that means that all the ideas that we're coming up with are just coming out of those folks' heads. What biomimicry offers is the opportunity to look to a library of 3.8 billion years of innovation that has taken place in nature and tapping into that to kind of get other ideas and think about, how would nature solve this problem? And nature has solved most problems out there if you kind of peel it back and look at it. So that stuff's super interesting. It's another way to kind of spark ideas inside of the team to get them in motion and solve kind of big complex problems, and using that library that's kind of in our backyard no matter where you're at in the world to work on that stuff. When we think about biomimicry in the technology space, there's actually been a fair amount of really cool examples that have been done. So there's a couple chunks of software that I'll talk about a little bit. There's one chunk of software from a company called Klaus Madak, and they built a piece of software, and you can thank all of your fuel efficiency in your cars is due to this chunk of software. So what they did was looked at, and the software's called SoftKill, and what it does is it looks at how nature uses material and shape in particular. So in nature, shape is very, very important because material is very hard to come up with. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of calories, a lot of food, whatever, to make new material. So when you see in nature, there's often shapes that do a specific thing. So when we think about a tree, for instance, if you ever look at a tree, if it was on exactly flat land, it would grow perfectly round, right? But if you look at a tree that's on a hill, on the downhill side, there'll be more material that's on that side of the tree. Or if you think about a limb, there'll be more material on the bottom of the limb. Similarly with our bones and birds' bones and stuff, that there's the exact right amount of shape, and then that material goes in there to create the exact optimal form of that. So the software, what they did was looked at all those shapes and looked at all the kind of math behind what was going on with that, and allows you to take parts when you're designing an automobile or an airplane or anything like that, put it into this software, and that SoftKill software will kind of go through it, run these biomimetic algorithms on that, and give you the exact optimal design for that shape so that it's the lightest, strongest that it can be. So all the fuel efficiency gains that you've seen and safety gains that you've seen probably in the last 20 to 25 years are due to some biomimicry stuff that happens in that SoftKill software. Some other places that we're really starting to see it, it's getting really interesting in AI and thinking about how we make that software and the learning that goes into that software, and everything in nature operates off of a few simple rules as an example. So when we think about if you've ever seen a murmur of birds and they're all flying in exact sync, there's no leader in there. There's no giant rule that dictates how that swarm is going to move. What's happening there is the rule is stay 3 centimeters to the bird to the left of me, the right of me, above me, below me, in front and in back of me, and then they just fly and they follow that simple rule. So those sorts of rule structures are being implemented in AI stuff, and we've seen some really interesting stuff around swarm technology. So there's a lot of work that's been done looking at how ants operate, and a lot of the logistical delivery software for companies like DHL and UPS and FedEx when they're on their delivery routes. Those optimal routes are being done based off of biomimetic rules that have been punched into those algorithms that allow those things to give the drivers the most optimal route that's going to use the least amount of fuel and least amount of stops and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of promise in software with the biomimicry space. Not a lot tapped into yet. I'm starting to think about it particularly in the design space when we think about a lot of us, when we build design systems, we think about atomic design, right? So you've got all the way down to the molecule, the atom, et cetera, and building up. So think like, type, button, module component, etc. There's been a lot of work done in that, but now I'm starting to think about stuff like ecosystems and systems and how those systems influence each other, and looking at that from a much more biomimetic process. So when we go into a large healthcare organization and we're doing digital transformation work, systems and ecosystems are all super interactive with each other, and there's a lot of systems thinking that can go into that, and then there's a lot of biomimetic thinking that can go into that, of how those ecosystems are actually going to behave with each other. So that's stuff that we're starting to work on from a design standpoint that gets kind of interesting with it as well. Thanks for checking out the video. If you had any questions about biomimicry or what I do in design, feel free to reach out. We're here all the time and appreciate the time we've spent together.